Are you trying to interrupt me? Welcome back. I love studying this book. It's so great. This is God's Word right here. It's very rich. It gives you wisdom, life, everything. And we're going to pick it up where we left off. Remember, they were in the lake, and they were tossed to and fro, and then they were sopping wet and everything. And it was really early in the morning, probably 3. It was definitely between 3 and 6. Could have been 3, 4, 5. So, and then they quickly, like immediately after the calm had gone, they got right up into the shore of a place called Gennesaret, which we'll talk about in a second. But and I think what happened is they were headed for Bethsaida. There's 2 Bethsaidas, and we'll talk about that in a second. Well, I'll just say it now. We have the east side of the River Jordan. You have the River Jordan here. We have the east side and the west side facing, if you're looking at it from a map, from your direction. And by the way, there's a lot of places that have the same name all over the town. Like I heard of a town in England, or a place in England, that has 14 or 15 different things with Bethsaida. I read about that name, and that's at least that many. And so, there's all sorts of repetition things that's all over the world. The same name is used all over the place. We have it in our own country, in the United States. But anyway, so Bethsaida. And by the way, I don't think that Bethsaida I think it's gone. It's been flattened. It's erased. As a lot of the towns, there were 10 major cities. Josephus, by the way, talks about, he's a historian. I have his book, by the way, The Works of Josephus, right here. And so he was a historian, a Jewish guy. Well, actually, he was a priest. He came from a Jewish priest, not Catholic, but he was a Jewish priest. And he was born 37 AD, which is 7 years, in my opinion, after Jesus had died. And he died, I think, 100 AD. He lived 63 years or so. I think that's correct in my estimation, 64 years old he died. But long story about him, I'm not going to tell much about him, but it's interesting life. And he wrote a lot of the history of stuff that and he was, there's reasons for all that. Anyway, he wrote all these works, a ton of them. Like, this is really small print. I don't know if you could tell that, but I have all of them right here, the complete works of what he wrote. And it's a history, the antiquities of the Jews, and he wrote about the wars and, about his own life, and really interesting stuff. I hope he became a Christian. He did mention Jesus, by the way. See, he is just one outside of the Bible of 45 that I know of, could be more, of things talking about this figure, this historical man named Jesus. And he lived right about the same time as Jesus, as I said. So he wrote about, this area, for example, that we're going to get into, of Gennesaret. Now, the word Gennesaret is used twice in the Bible. It's in this passage, Matthew 14, and also the parallel passage, the same story, of Mark 6 near the end. And so here we have this, as you know, this is the Israel, and this is a lake of Gennesaret. Now, they call that lake different names. I know of 5 of them. I don't know if I'll name them all now. Well, maybe I can. Galilee, Gennesaret, Kinneret, Tiberias, and there's another one. I think I said Kinneret. Yeah, Kinneret is the Old Testament name. If I think of it long enough, I'll probably think of it. But anyway, there's 5 different names I know of. And one of them was named after this Gennesaret, which, by the way, is a town named Gennesaret. And then there's a beautiful plain. It's a beautiful, fertile, triangular thing, which we're going to get into in a second. Okay, so anyway, Josephus mentions that, and he describes it at length. But anyway, Matthew is basically in this next story, as all these stories. If you pull it out and you read it, you kind of want to ask these questions: who is he writing to, and who is in the story? And it was just Jesus and the disciples. Remember, they were in the boat. And then what happened, and what was going on, and then when did it happen? And I think if you study it carefully, if you put Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, I think it was Thursday night, that this happened, this big storm, the second storm mentioned in Matthew, And then the calming of the storm is like early in the morning, Friday morning, like Thursday night, 3 o'clock. And then Friday comes in the morning, and they cross over and they land on this area called Gennesaret. It's beautiful valley. It was like, it's like a nature valley, like, not a granola bar, but it was really a beautiful, wonderful place where fruits were, a lot of trees and all that. Well, we'll explain that a little bit later. But anyway, and it was Friday that this happened, and then they got there, probably dried off early in the morning, kind of, and then people found out. This is a story, and this men found out that, oh, they're here, and word spread like wildfire. And all the surrounding villages of this lake right here in this area, people right around that plain spread the news, and he had actually been there most likely before. And so it seems like, and so they were really coming up. And guess what they did? And this is why Matthew brought this up, because this is another time where multitudes of people were healed from their sicknesses, which is really powerful, which is another time. Like, he did this over and over. Crowds came to him and he just healed them like crazy. I love it. By the way, they actually wanted to touch the fringe, the hem of his garment. Remember, now it's probably not pink at all. I'm sure it wasn't. A fringe was this type of thing that hung on a square piece of thing that was put over them, a robe type thing, and there were fringes like this that were hanging down, and so they just wanted to touch that. It was a Jewish custom, kind of separating themselves. This is Old Testament, separating themselves from showing in their clothing that they're separate from different nations and all, that they're God's holy people. Anyway, so they said, if I just touch the fringe of the garment. Now, doesn't that remind you of a story that Matthew wrote of in chapter 9? Right now we're in chapter 14. And what happened is, you remember that woman with the issue of blood for 12 years? She was really bleeding like crazy. And she said, if I but touch the fringe, well, they heard of that story, I believe. And they said, well, maybe we could touch the fringe of the garment. And so where it was, this was in this plain, which I'll draw a little bit more in a second. Why is Matthew mentioning this? Why did this story happen? He's, again, proving to his readers of his gospel, this big book that he wrote, 28 chapters. Although there were no chapters, by the way, it's just straight writing, no punctuation, no chapters, no verse numbers. And but he was telling the story of Jesus and who he was, and he was telling why he believed that he was the Son of God, and especially Jewish audience that he was writing to, readers. And so he was proving to them. Well, one of the things is, look, he's doing it again. People are being healed like crazy. By the way, I love the word all. It's a little word, but it's a big word. A-L-L. And it's big because everybody that came was healed by him. Everybody that had sicknesses, and they were bringing people to him. Word spread again. And you might say, well, I thought he already healed all these people. Yeah, but these are months later that he came back in this area and people were sick again, or maybe they broke their leg or something. Jesus was healing all these people. It's fantastic. And how did they heal him? He spoke to them, and how did he heal them? He spoke to them and they touched him. See, that's cool if you can just touch Jesus. And if you reach out in faith, if you're listening to this, if you can reach out by faith, you don't see him, you don't feel him, you may not hear him, physically. If you reach out by faith, then you can touch Jesus too, and you can get healings. I've had this happen to me. And also you can hear him and guide you and save your soul and deliver you from demons and everything else. So this is who, what, when, where, why, how. And I say it was like the when part was Friday, because Saturday, after he started healing everybody, then the next story, if you look over in John chapter 6, he's now speaking and preaching after this incident. Remember, he fed the 5,000 men and all those women and children. And now he's in the synagogue and he's preaching to them. And it kind of all, if you put it together, you get pieces of the puzzle. I love it. God put like all these beautiful pieces of the puzzle, and he wants us to put it together. And it's really cool to see that. So there's that part. Let me go into a little bit more interesting stuff. I meant to do something. if you remember, I just had this picture of, let me get this real quick, of Israel, you know, like this. I hope you can see this, like this. It went like this. And here's, you know, the lake of Gennesaret, Kinneret. I'm going to still see if I can remember that fifth one right here. So if I take this right here, and I'm going to take this part right here, and I'm going to draw it, like I'm going to make it big. This is what it was like. Let me go like this. I'll draw it like this. So here's the picture here now of it being big. And so actually, I keep blowing it. Well, right here, let's take that section. So no, I'll do the whole thing. I'm sorry. Yeah, I was good. I was thinking about it. Okay, so you come down here, and then this is the Lake of Gennesaret, like here. Okay, or Tiberias, and all different. John mentions the word Tiberias in here, and Tiberias became right here is Tiberias, right about here. I'll just put T for Tiberias. That became the capital of this whole Galilee region, also Perea over here, and it was named after Tiberius Caesar in his honor, you know, which is the emperor of Rome, who was over the most of the world. And this is Tiberias right here. It was built, and it started being built in 20 AD. Jesus, when he was a kid at that time, it wasn't even there. So they built that. And then there was 10 major towns and lots of little hamlets and villages and towns all around here. It's packed here. Most of it is totally ruined. It's totally gone. And only a few sites with the bigger cities, like Tiberias is still there a little bit. Capernaum was just the ruins of Capernaum. Nobody lives there. You know, just a few sites are there. But that's where I think the second Bethsaida here of Julius was there, and Bethsaida was over here somewhere. But I think it's just ruined, and antiquity is gone. But that was the second Tiberias. Bethsaida. Now, if you go up the lake here of Tiberias, and then you come right about at the edge, I didn't really do a really good here. See if I can draw this better. So it kind of goes like this. See if I can draw this. That's a little better, maybe. Okay, right about here is Magdala. And we'll get into that story in the book of John with Mary of Magdalene. So that's pretty interesting. And then you come up a little bit further. Well, let's go down here. Capernaum, it's really questionable exactly where this is, but it seems like it's probably here. It might be a little closer up here. There's Capernaum. And then you have Tarikai. Oh, by the way, Gennesaret is probably, this town of Gennesaret is probably right about there. Now, so there's Gennesaret, but then you have this really beautiful plain, fertile, really soft soil, a lot of, and it's still there. It goes like this. It's on the northwest shore right here. I'll kind of go like this, and it probably goes something like this, sort of a triangle or crescent. It could be a little bit circular, but triangular area right there. And I hope you can see it right there. And Gennesaret is about 3.5 miles this way. So it's like this way. I'll draw a line here. Can you see that? It's about 3.5 miles long. And then going this way, like this way to this way, it's about 1.5 miles. And oh my goodness, it's such a great and beautiful place. All sorts of trees are there. In the time of Josephus, he wrote about this. He particularly mentioned walnut trees, a lot of wood, a lot of trees, and particularly walnut trees, and then palm trees, fig trees, a lot of grapes, like grapevines and things were there. Speaking of grapes, just think about that, just delicious, wonderful, wonderful grapes. I think I'm just going to eat this right in front of you. I'm teasing you. No, I'm not teasing. I'm really eating it. Anyway, a lot of grapes were there, palm trees, walnuts were there, so it's kind of cool. And then, did I name them all? There's different ones. Yeah, tropical plants, tropical fruit was there, so it's really delicious. And I think the storm had pushed him down away from the Bethsaida, the other one, into that area. So he came there, and then mass people came, and then he just healed them all. I love that. And if they could just be touched. And I think that's Matthew's way of saying it happened again. You know, he's really describing again who he is. And so I think that's the story that I wanted to tell you there. Yeah, it says, and when they were gone over, they came into the land of Gennesaret. And when the men of that place had knowledge of him, they sent out unto all the country round about. And Mark mentions villages and all. They were bringing people on beds and all. And brought unto him all that were sick. And it says, and they begged, or they besought him, they looked for him, that they might only touch the hem or the edge, the fringe, particularly of his garment. And as many as touched were made perfectly whole. It's a beautiful way of saying it. So this is a really wonderful story of Jesus and how he's healing. And then he went a little bit north, you know, up to Capernaum, right here, coming up here, but it's not in Matthew's gospel. And then he taught right there. And boy, what a teaching. This is a really dramatic one where after he taught there, all those crowds that kept following him, almost all of them left. Actually, I think all of them left, and there were only the disciples left. What he said there, he was not trying to be popular. You know, he wants to give you salvation, but he's not going to, you know, water down his message or make it easy and let people like him. He's going to tell the truth. And so I'm telling you the truth. If you can come to Jesus and call on his name and get saved and give your life to him, and then you can see wonderful things happen, as he did even in the New Testament. All right. God bless you. I'm glad you listened to this.